And speaking of magic, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Goldberg to wrap up our stories. Larry is a longtime collaborator, a friend, and really a personal hero of mine. Larry is head of accessibility at Verizon Media. Something I love about Larry is that he has single handedly founded more grassroots organizations than almost anybody I know, including Teach Access, XR Access, and Start Access, all with related missions to help ensure that the future is more inclusive. Early in his career, Larry helped pioneer the development of the captioning system for digital television in the US through a grant from none other than our federal government. So every time my family watches a movie, I don't know if this is true with yours, but they all want captioning now. And every time we clamor to turn it on, I say a silent thank you, Larry. We appreciate what you have done to your contribution there that has benefited everybody. So we appreciate you. Thanks, Larry. So let's go ahead and hear your story of change and hear what's going on at Verizon Media.
Thanks, Joanne. I know you invited me here as comic relief, and I'm going to be a great lead in to Dennis, because you didn't mention I'm also kind of a loose cannon. And
True
I'm going to
story.
be, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Now, if there are a lot of federal employees listening, I hope I'm not safe for work for you guys. I'll be okay. My story of change, oddly enough, I could go back to that fateful March. But I'll go from now. Just this week, my entire company had a massive change. It's not something we can talk about really yet, but just go ahead and do a web search for Verizon and Verizon Media, and I'll give you a little clue. It's got something to do with that. So look it up, and boy, if there's ever a definition of a period of time with change, this is it. Now, when Joywyn posted on LinkedIn that, oh, we're all fearing change, and I was like, no, I love change. Anyone got some spare change? Now, this might just be me, but to me, it's like you have to embrace change because it's going to come. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. And if you're not ready or willing to be flexible, and luckily I do work in an industry that kind of thrives on it so much in this tech world. But you have to be ready for change. And, after maybe seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, all of a sudden this big corporate change comes to us. I have to tell you, my team, it's a small team, not substantive like the rest of the folks who are talking. There's only 5 of us, but we do consider everyone at Verizon Media part of the team, and that's 10,000. But my team was like, yeah, we got this. Yeah, here we go again, and we are going to follow our mission, and having your eyes on the prize, it really helps a lot. And it's helped us through this past year a lot. We are innovating by the minute. Last March, I was in Florida on vacation, not the March before, is it that long ago? And I knew something was up when the Red Sox canceled spring training, because that's what I went down for, not to try out, to attend a game. And they canceled the game, and I thought, oh, this must be serious, because you don't cancel Major League Baseball readily. And within days, we left early, came back, and started watching the world change. Now, oddly enough, because my team and the people I work with are located all over the country, I kind of spend my day doing this. I have I've been working the company almost 7 years. So I'd sit in front of a monitor and do conference calls. So what's the big deal? What's changing? Well, what's changing is that was in my head. That was not in the head of all the people I was working with who were used to seeing each other, going to the cafeteria. It was such a treat to me when I used to travel and get to actually see people face to face. But they had, and they were changing. And in Verizon Media, we have a lot of technicians, a lot of editorial people. We've got Yahoo News and Yahoo Sports, In the Know, all kinds of online media, and a lot of them were live video shows, streaming shows. Well, it was awesome for me to watch how these really heavy high-tech video streams, particularly Yahoo Finance, which streams 8 hours a day, bell to bell, move their studios into the homes and living rooms of their anchors almost seamlessly. And they didn't miss a beat. I was like, that is the way to react. That was pretty incredible. And off they went, and that's where they've been ever since. Uh, Oddly enough, we had just finished building a multi-million-dollar studio in two of our locations, and we'll get back to use them again. But there they are doing what Dennis does, wearing plaid pajamas and bunny slippers and delivering the latest Wall Street results. And I think about that every time when I watch them, because we know what's going on behind the scenes. Um, One of the things that has really struck this year is, obviously, along with what we're going through with the pandemic, is the attention to racial justice in this country. And now being in a major for-profit company, seeing how they dealt with that, it was so fascinating. The tech sector hasn't been known for its ability to be diverse and to take in a lot of voices. We've talked about it from time to time. It's like this wave of DEI, but this time it was real, and it was really real. And you really, or at least for some companies that we respect, they had to pay real attention to how they were treating their employees, how they were dealing with their customers, um, and then how they're telling the stories to the public. And you want to be authentic. You hear that word over and over again. Well, one of the authentic stories that I got to watch was from Verizon, which is a huge company with a lot of help desks and a lot of people working all day long taking the calls. And there was one blind woman who was working from the office with just this array of technology, assistive technology that blind people use. And as soon as they started shutting down the offices and telling people to work from home, she thought, oh, well, that's it. I'm going to be furloughed. I'm going to be fired. I don't have all this stuff in my house. Well, I think the story is right on the web here. They sent a SWAT team to her house, not really SWAT, a tech team with all the technologies, and they set her up to work from home in a day. She didn't miss a beat. And all of a sudden now she's taking all these user calls at home, and they just were able to accommodate her. Would they have done that previously in having not been exposed to the need to really serve everyone, being fully inclusive? I don't know, but they sure did it this time, and it was really impressive. So 96% of my company now working from home. Um, Verizon doing these house calls now, like your cable's out, your internet's out. They developed a system where they will stand outside your house and call you on the phone and say, all right, go down to your basement, look up in the ceiling. You see that wire? Not the green one, the white one. Okay, disconnect that. And that's how they're doing service calls, so that they didn't have to work with people face to face. It's incredible, that adaptation. For us, you might have heard the quote, "Never waste a crisis." We just started innovating every single day, started pulling off stuff that we probably never would have been allowed to do or would have thought about doing. Because we serve people with disabilities so significantly across the map, we started looking at, what about online media? What about these calls right now? We're using Zoom? They didn't have captioning before all this. Now they do. All the video conference systems now have it, and we're helping innovate around that. We're being resilient. We're showing grit. We're realizing that just because you're sitting in front of the screen, that might be your home and your comfort level, but not what's going on out in the world. And so I'm impressed by how now diversity inclusion is really feeling more dug in. And now we're working, of course, on making sure people realize when you're thinking intersectional, you're thinking about people with disabilities too, which sometimes people forgot, but not anymore.
Awesome, Larry. I really love that notion of never letting a crisis go to waste. I'm curious, when you think about the future and now, companies might be changing, people might be shifting. What are you really excited about in the future? What is the you always have something new and exciting that you launch. What's the next thing you're launching, or the next great thing your team is focused on?
Well, there's always, it'll be whatever it is, it's going to be something access, since clearly I've found a groove there. Um, I should mention the Start Access program you mentioned, which is big companies are doing much better about making their technologies more accessible. But what about startups? What about little companies? What about the ones that say, oh, I would like to make my new tech accessible maybe after I make my first round of funding, maybe version 2. But Joywin and Wheelhouse and Pete basically joined with the American Association of People with Disabilities and said, no, we have to start first and foremost. We need to listen to each other. The disability community needs to listen to startups and venture capitalists. What's going to trigger, oh, by the way, you see my t-shirt says born accessible? What's going to make these new technologies born accessible? And this is a great movement that we're working on together. One of the new ones we're doing is virtual reality accessibility. How are we going to make these immersive environments work for people who can't hear, for people who can't see? It's coming. It's going to be in our lives. It's going to be our workplaces. It's in our schools. And we're working with some of the best technologists, academics, and advocates in this project called XR Access. You can look us up at xraccess.org. Got a major symposium coming up on June 10. Everyone's invited. Go to xraccess.org/symposium to learn more. And we're going to find ways of making things like this. This is the Oculus, the earlier version, donated by Facebook. We gave this to a lot of people with disabilities and said, imagine what you would add to a technology like this so that anyone could use it using haptics, AI, machine learning, automatic speech recognition, and we're doing it, coming up with some very cool stuff.
Larry, that's so awesome. I know that the US government is beginning to use XR extensively, especially the military, both in theater and in training exercises. So, it's not just, the range of people with disabilities include those that are, losing sight as they age, or, veterans that have been wounded in battle. So thank you so much for what you're doing and what you're contributing.
Well,
I'm going to wrap.
let me
Yep.
just mention, by the way, you want me to say this. The keynote speaker at the XR Access Symposium will be the new Chief Innovation Officer at the U.S. Department of Labor, Chike Gu. I think I pronounced that right. And boy, is that going to be great to see him lead us off.
Awesome. Thank you for the invitation, Larry.